October 18th, 1903, Volume 5. Sin is an act of the human will, opposite to the divine. True love is to live in the will of the beloved. Continuing in my usual state, I saw my adorable Jesus for short instants, and he told me, "My daughter, do you know what forms sin? An act of the human will opposite to the divine. Imagine two friends who are in opposition. If the thing is light, you would say that their friendship is not perfect and loyal. Be it even in little things, how can they love and yet oppose each other? True love is to live in the will of the other, even at the cost of sacrifice. If then the thing is grave, not only are they not friends, but they are fierce enemies. Such is sin. Opposing the divine will is the same as making God one's enemy, be it even in little things. It is always the creature that puts herself in opposition to the Creator. October 18th, 1905, Volume 6. Everything is in increasing love and in remaining close to Jesus. This morning I was in my usual state, and Jesus came all of a sudden and told me, "My daughter, what foolishness! Even in holy things they think of how to content themselves. If in holy things they make me flee, where shall I find a place in the actions of my creatures? What a mistake! When everything is in anticipating the actions of love, in executing them, gathering as many things as possible in order to increase love, and remaining very close to me to drink at the spring of my love, and to immerse oneself completely in my love. And yet what a blunder! They do everything differently." Having said this, he disappeared. October 18th, 1906, Volume 7. The works which most please Jesus are the hidden works. As I was in my usual state, blessed Jesus just barely came and told me, "My daughter, the works which I like the most are the hidden works, because free from any human spirit, they contain such preciousness within themselves that I keep them as the choicest inside my heart." So much so that in comparing 1,000 external and public works with one internal and hidden work, the 1,000 external ones remain below the single internal work, because in the external works the human spirit always takes its part. October 18th, 1911, Volume 10. Jesus plays with the soul. This morning, my most sweet Jesus just barely made himself seen in the act of putting his finger in my mouth, almost wanting me to raise my voice to speak to him, telling me, "Make me a lullaby of love. I want to distract myself a little from that which creatures do to me. Speak to me of love. Cheer me." And I, "You do it first, for I will learn from you how to do it." And Jesus told me many things about love, adding, "Shall we play?" And I, "Yes." And he seemed to take an arrow from within his heart, sending it into mine. I felt I was dying with pain, and I writhed with love. And Jesus, "I did it, now you do it." And I don't know what to send you. In order to do it for you, I must use your own. And so I took the arrow and I threw it into his heart. And Jesus was wounded and fainted, and I sustained him in my arms. But who can say all the nonsense? Now, at the best moment, he disappeared, without even helping me to turn. It seemed that an angel wanted to help me. And no, I want Jesus. My angel, call him, otherwise I will stay here. And I cried out loudly, Come, come, O Jesus. And it seemed that Jesus came. I won him. Bravo, Jesus. And while helping me to turn, he told me, You offend the angel. And it is not true. I want everything from you. Besides, he knows that I must love you over all. Jesus smiled and disappeared. October 18th, 1921, Volume 13. The disturbance of the soul is the night that prevents the sun of Jesus from rising. Disturbance is nothing other than lack of abandonment in God. I spent a day distracted because of a few things I heard, which it is not necessary here to say, and also a little disturbed. And as much as I tried, I could not free myself. So for the entire day I did not see my sweet Jesus, the life of my soul, as if the disturbance were a veil which, placing itself between me and him, prevented me from being able to see him. Then, late at night, my mind, tired, calmed itself, and my lovable Jesus, as if he were waiting, made himself seen, and sorrowful told me, My daughter, today with your disturbance you have prevented the sun of my person from rising in you. Disturbance is cloud between me and you, which prevents the rays from descending in you. And if the rays do not descend, how can you see the sun? If you knew what it means not to let my sun rise, and what great harm this is for you and for the whole world, you would be well attentive never to trouble yourself. In fact, it is always night-time for disturbed souls, and at night the sun does not rise. On the other hand, it is always daylight for the peaceful ones, and at whatever hour my sun wants to rise, the soul is always ready to receive the good of my coming. Then disturbance is nothing other than lack of abandonment in me, and I want you so abandoned in my arms that you must not have even one thought for yourself. I will take care of everything. Do not fear. Your Jesus cannot do without taking care of you, keeping you sheltered from all. You cost me much. Much have I placed in you. I alone have right over you. Therefore, if the rights are mine, the custody will be all mine. So, be at peace, and do not fear. October 18th, 1929, Volume 27, Beauty of the Creation. For one who lives in the divine will, God is in the act of always creating. The creature who lives in the divine volition doubles her love toward God. The two arms, immutability and firmness. I felt myself in the immensity of the light of the divine Fiat, and in this light one could see the whole creation lined up as a birth from it. And wanting to delight in its works, it seemed as if it were in the act of creating them, and of always making them by preserving them. And my lovable Jesus, coming out from within my interior in the act of looking at the creation to glorify himself by means of his works, told me, My daughter, how beautiful is creation, how it glorifies us, how it magnifies the power of our Fiat. It is nothing but one single act of our divine volition, and though many things can be seen, one different from the other, they are nothing but the effects of its single act that never ceases and contains its continuous operating act. And since our act possesses by nature as its own exclusive property light, immensity, empire, and multiplicity of innumerable effects. It is no wonder, then, that as our fiat formed its single act, from it came out immensity of heavens, most refulgent sun, vastness of sea, ruling wind, beauty of flowering, species of every kind, and power such that, as if all creation were a light breath, a little feather, it keeps it suspended without any support, enclosed only in its creative strength. O power of my fiat, how insuperable and unreachable you are! Now you must know that only in the soul in whom my divine will reigns, since it reigns in all creation, what the soul does unites itself to the single act that my will does in the creation, to receive the deposit of all the good that was done in it. In fact, this great machine of the universe was done in order to give it to the creature, but to that creature who would let our divine volition reign. It is right that we do not go out of our established purpose, and that the creature recognize and receive our gift. But how to receive it? If she is not in our house, that is, in our divine will, she would lack the capacity to receive it and the space in which to contain it. Therefore, only one who possesses my divine will can receive it. My will delights with its single act, as if it were in the act of creating for love of her. It makes her feel its continuous act of creating the heavens, the sun, and everything, and says to her, "See how much I love you. Only for you I continue to create all things, and to receive the requital from you, I make use of your acts as material in order to extend the heavens, as material of light in order to form the sun, and so with all the rest. The more acts you do in my fiat, the more material you administer to me with which to form more beautiful things in you. Therefore let your flight in my will never stop, and I will take the occasion to always operate in you." After this, I continued my acts in the divine volition, and making all of its acts done in creation and redemption my own, I offered them to the divine majesty as the most beautiful gift I could give it, as requital of my love. And I said to myself, "Oh, how I would like to have a heaven, a sun, a sea, a flowery earth, and everything that exists, all my own, to be able to give to my Creator my heaven, a sun that would be my own, a sea and a flowering that would all say, 'I love you, I love you, I adore you.'" But while I was thinking of this, my beloved Jesus, clasping me in his arms, told me, "My daughter, for one who lives in our will, everything is her own. Since her will is one with ours, what is ours is hers. Therefore, in all truth you can say to us, 'I give you my heaven, my sun, and everything.' The love of the creature rises into our love and places itself at our level. In our divine fiat, the creature duplicates our love, our light, our power, happiness, and beauty. And we feel loved, not only with our own doubled love, but with powerful love, with love that enraptures us, with love that makes us happy. And seeing ourselves being loved with doubled love on the part of the creature who lives in our will, for love of her we feel drawn to love all creatures with doubled love. In fact, with the creature in our fiat, her act loses life, and she acquires our act as her own, and our act possesses the font of light, of power, of love, the font of happiness and beauty, and the soul can double, triple, multiply our fonts as much as she wants. And since she is in our will, we let her do it. We give her all the freedom, because what she does remains all in our house. Nothing goes out of our divine and endless boundaries. Therefore there is no danger that the font of our goods might receive the slightest harm. So, if you remain always in our divine will, what is ours is yours, and you can give us whatever you want as your own. Then I felt afflicted because of many things that it is not necessary to say on paper. And my adorable Jesus added, "My daughter, courage. I do not want you to afflict yourself. I want to see in your soul the peace and the joy of the celestial fatherland. I want your very nature to give of the fragrance of divine will that is all peace and happiness. It would feel uncomfortable in you, and as though jeopardized in its light and happiness, if perennial peace and happiness is not in you. And then, don't you know that one who lives in my divine fiat forms two arms for herself? One is immutability. The other arm is firmness in operating continuously. With these two arms, she keeps God clasped in such a way that he cannot free himself from the creature. Not only this, but he enjoys her keeping him clasped to herself. Therefore you have no reason to afflict yourself, whatever the circumstances might be, when you have a God who is all your own. So, let your thought be to live in that fiat that gave you life to form life in you, and I will take care of the rest." October 18th, 1930, Volume 28. Value of the kisses and embraces of the Virgin to baby Jesus, because possessing the divine will, all of her acts rendered themselves infinite and immense for Jesus. Resurrection of the acts done in the divine will. Effects of the I love you. I continue in my usual state, and pausing in the act when the sovereign queen gave birth to little baby Jesus, and clasping him to her breast, kissed him and kissed him again, and delighting in him, gave him her most sweet milk. Oh, how I too yearned to give him my affectionate kisses and my tender embraces to my little child Jesus. And he, making himself seen in act of receiving them, told me, "Daughter of my volition, all the value of the acts of my celestial mamma was because they came out of the immense womb of my divine will, whose kingdom, whose life she possessed. There was not one motion, act, breath, and heartbeat that was not full of supreme volition, up to overflowing outside. Her loving kisses that she gave me came out of the font of it. Her chaste embraces with which she embraced my infantile humanity contained the immensity. In her most pure milk with which she nourished me, as I suckled from her virginal breast, I suckled from the immense breast of my fiat, and in that milk I suckled its infinite joys, its ineffable sweetnesses, the food, the substance, the infantile growth of my humanity, from the immense abyss of my divine will. So, in her kisses I felt the eternal kiss of my will that, when it does an act, never ceases doing it. In her embraces I felt a divine immensity embracing me. And in her milk I nourished myself divinely and humanly, and she gave me back my celestial joys and the contentments of my divine will that kept her all filled. If the sovereign queen had not had a divine will in her power, I would not have contented myself with her kisses, with her love, with her embraces, and with her milk. At the most, my humanity would have been content, but my divinity, I, Word of the Father, who had the infinite, the immense, in my power, wanted infinite kisses, immense embraces, milk full of divine joys and sweetnesses. And only in this way was I satisfied, as my mamma, possessing my divine will, could give me kisses, embraces, love, and all her acts that gave of the infinite. Now you must know that all the acts that are done in my divine will are inseparable from it. It can be said that they form one single thing, act and will. The will can be called light, the act heat, that are inseparable from each other. So all those who will possess my fiat as life will have in their power all the acts of the celestial Mama, and she had in her power all of their acts, in such a way that in her kisses and embraces I felt myself kissed and embraced by all those who were to live in my will, and in them I feel myself being kissed again and embraced by my Mama. Everything is in common and in perfect accord in my will. Each human act descends from its womb, and with its power, it makes it rise back into the center from which it came out. Therefore be attentive and let nothing escape you that does not enter into my divine will, if you want to give me everything and receive everything. My poor mind continues its course inside the divine will, according to the circumstances I find myself in. But my point of support, my origin, the means, the end of my acts, is always the divine will. Its life runs within me like the sweet murmuring of the sea that never stops. And I, as requital of homage and of love, give to it the murmuring of my acts that the same divine fiat makes me do. And my always lovable Jesus continues telling me, my daughter, each act done in my divine will forms a divine resurrection in the soul. Life is formed not of one act, but of many acts united together. So the more acts are done, so many times does she rise again in my will, in such a way as to be able to form a complete life, all of divine will. Just as the human life is formed of many distinct members in order to be able to form its life, and if there were only one member, it could not be called life, and if some members were missing, it would be called defective life. In the same way, the repeated acts done in my will serve as if different members of divine will were formed in the creature, and while they serve to reunite together these acts in order to form the life, they serve to nourish the same life. And since my divine will has no end, the more acts are done in it, the more its divine life grows in the creature. And while this life rises again and grows, the human will receives death from these very acts done in my divine volition. It finds no nourishments with which to nourish itself, and feels itself dying at each act done in my divine will. But what sorrow! As many times as the creature does her will in her acts, so many times does she make mine die in her act. Oh, how horrifying it is to see that a finite will casts out of its act an infinite will that wants to give its life of light, of beauty, of sanctity. Then I continued my acts in the divine volition with my usual refrain, I love you. I love you in everything that you have done for love of us. But while I was doing this, I thought to myself, Blessed Jesus must be tired of my sing-song, I love you, so why say it? And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, My daughter, true love, accompanied also by the words, I love you, never brings me tiredness, because I, being a complex of love and a continuous act of love, as I never cease to love, when I find my love in the creature, I find myself. And the sign that her love is a birth from my love is when it is continuous. An interrupted love is not the sign of divine love. At the most, it can be a love of circumstances, an interested love, such that, as these cease, love ceases. And also the words, I love you, are nothing other than the air that my love produces in the creature that, condensed within her, produces as though many flashes of little flames toward him whom she loves. And when I hear you say, I love you, do you know what I say? My daughter is flashing in the air of her love toward me, and one flash does not wait for another. And besides, all continuous acts are those that have the virtue of preserving, nourishing, and growing the life of creatures. See, also the sun rises every morning and has its continuous act of light, nor can it be said that by rising every day it tires men and the earth. Rather, the complete opposite. All long for the rising of the sun, and only because it rises every day does it form the nourishment of the earth. Day after day it keeps nourishing, little by little, the sweetness in the fruits, until it makes them reach perfect maturation. It nourishes the varied tints of colors for the flowers, the development for all the plants, and so with all the rest. A continuous act can be called perennial miracle, though creatures do not pay attention to it. But your Jesus cannot do without paying attention, because I know the prodigious virtue of an act never interrupted. Therefore your I love you serves to preserve, nourish, and grow the life of my love in you. If you do not nourish it, it cannot grow, nor receive the multiplicity of the sweetnesses and the variety of the divine colors that my love contains. End of October 18th. Fiat.